Hello and welcome to a critique of the Borderlands 2 Reborn Pearlescent. For those of you who don't know, the Reborn mod pack is an overhaul mod for Borderlands 2 in which it switches up a lot of the unique gear, completely changes it, to give a fresh Borderlands 2 experience. Overall, the mod pack has been a lot of fun. I have fully leveled Amaya from level 1 to OP8, and I have enjoyed every step of the way. And I am here to give my review and critique on some of the Pearlescents we have in this mod pack. So, jumping into this, what do I personally want from Pearlescent? I want it to be not necessarily strictly better than other things, but I want it to be a little bit, maybe a little overpowered, in a sense. I feel like Borderlands 2, it's the rarest kind of weapon in the game. You know, Pearlescent rarity. You can only get it from level 62 and above from certain enemies. And I think that these weapons should pack a serious punch, and I think the Borderlands 2 Reborn mod delivers. I don't think there is a single Pearlescent in this pack that is bad, out of the new ones at least, which I think is really good. That being said, although I do think Pearlescents should be almost objectively better than their counterparts with gimmicks that make them fun, I think there are some equipment that is just a bit too powerful. You know, even though it's supposed to be overpowered, there is some gear that, you know, has the potential to sort of break the challenge of the game and make it unfun. That being said, I think this pack was done wonderfully. Very well. And I don't have that many complaints, but that being said, it doesn't matter how good it is. Nothing's perfect. So let's get into it. So the first Pearlescent we're going to look at is the Draco. It replaces the Sawbar assault rifle. And I think the Draco is a good example of probably what the Pearlescents should have been. This is a weapon that instantly, instead of the Sawbar, so the way the Sawbar functions is that it shoots out 3 pellets that essentially explode at a certain distance, or it shoots out a bullet that splits at a certain distance. It has big AoE. This gets rid of that. It's a banded assault rifle with an E-Tech barrel, and that's a big thing. That's a big deal here when it comes to the change, because now instead of firing regular bullets, we have essentially 3 blaster shots with huge AoE. And you can see just there it causes my frames to dip a little. And I think this is a great example. This is a really good example of taking a Pearlescent weapon from base game and almost objectively improving on it. So why do I think it's so much better? It's because it gets rid of the gimmick of the Sawbar. So the Sawbar had sort of a sweet spot, and this gets rid of that, and I think that's perfect. Because honestly, I don't think Pearlescents should have like a sweet spot. I feel like it should just have general use. This fulfills that exactly. And I don't know, it just feels like a great weapon. It feels like a great upgrade. It definitely fulfills the same niche as the Sawbar, as this huge AoE fire weapon, but it gets rid of some of that learning curve and some of the weakness of being up close and personal. You know, you can just shoot this at your feet for complete effectiveness, and I think that's great. Overall, not really any complaints. I think this is one of the better designed Pearls in this pack from a strict upgrade standpoint. I think this is almost an objective improvement upon the Sawbar. Of course, it's not going to be good or as good at rating on Terramorphous, you know, the saw bar was used in a lot of rating strategies for characters like Axton, but I'm not going to miss that. I think this overall is much, much better. Moving on, we have the Salvation. Now, the Salvation is pretty special. It's a Molly-Wand pistol with a pretty decent ignite chance, pretty good damage, good fire rate for Molly-Wand pistols in this mod pack, like much higher than average. Good reload speed and good mag. What makes it special? Well, as you can see, shooting causes these transfusion orbs to fly around. And if we will demonstrate, on top of transfusions, it has just passive regen. It has passive regen, it has transfusion orbs, it has lifesteal. And I believe it has team healing, but I don't have any friends to play with, so I don't know. I'm lonely. But overall, I see this as a way to essentially replace the Grog Nozzle in terms of overpowered amounts of healing. For those of you who don't know, the Grog Nozzle is still in the Reborn mod pack, but its healing got taken down from about, I think, 65% to like 12%. Oh, it looks like it actually regens ammo here too. I didn't actually know that. But this is probably the ultimate sustain weapon. I think if you have this in your hand, it's probably going to be really, really, really hard to die. I think that's good. I think that's totally fine in a Pearlescent weapon. This has good enough DPS stats to be used normally, on top of giving you you and your team a crazy amount of survivability. I think this is fine. I believe this weapon replaces the Wanderlust, which was ultimately just a little underwhelming by most people's standards, almost unusable by a lot of people's standards. So that's probably good. It doesn't really keep with the theme of the Wanderlust. It's not a dart, but I think that's fine, as I think darts as a whole were kind of just bad. The only problem I could see with this weapon is that maybe the healing is too powerful. I'm looking at the balance of all these weapons coming from a perspective that you are playing on OP8. And when you are hitting damage numbers like 425k per hit with a dot of about 30k per tick, and you're healing for what seems to be more than half. Let me check. Yeah, it looks to be about 50% healing. It can feel like it's almost impossible to die. That being said, healing isn't everything in this game. You can still die to things like dots. You can still get health gated and then, you know, have a fire dot on you. And if you can't aim, or you can't land a shot, you know, maybe they ran behind cover, maybe you're fighting buzzards, whatever, you can still die, which is totally fine. I think this is the best healing weapon in its class, even though it's not a Moxie weapon. And I think that's great. It's hands down the best sustain weapon, and that's perfect. That's exactly how a Pearlescent should be. Should be the best in its class. Moving on to the railgun. I think the railgun is great for a lot of reasons. It's not too terribly special in what it does. It is a Jacobs Pearlescent sniper rifle with an E-Tech barrel that has high critical hit chance and pretty good base damage. But the reason I like it so much is that in the base game, there were two, I believe, 2 Pearlescent snipers. Let me check. Yeah, 2 Pearlescent snipers. There's the Godfinger and the Storm, both of which were extremely, extremely underwhelming. They were both really bad. The Godfinger, you know, it had you. It made you essentially stand so unbelievably far away that it was essentially useless to get any of its damage. Because the way the Godfinger worked is that the farther away you were, the more damage you did. And although that sounds cool in theory. I think the railgun is a much, much, much better example of a one-shot sniper, or an all-purpose mobbing sniper for someone focusing on critical hit. Because the Godfinger tried to be that, and it failed. It failed miserably. And this is essentially, to me, this just feels like Muck-a-Muck Plus, which I think is totally fine. Overall, I think this is completely fine. It enters a new, essentially a new archetype into the Pearlescent pool. Going further, we have the Cerberus, which is a lot like the railgun in the sense that it's a Vladoff pistol, has three pellets at all times. I don't believe it can be increased. It has, like I said, 3 pellets, but at no fire rate or damage cost. So this is essentially just a lot of pellets at all times. Really fast fire rate, really good mag size, and it just feels pretty good. I think the only other real Vladoff pistols to compare this to would be the Stalker, which was pretty underwhelming as a Pearlescent. You know, the shtick it had was bouncing bullets, and that's just not, it's not that good. And we also had the Infinity, which had infinite ammo at the cost of damage. And this is just it's a Vladoff pistol with 3 pellets with good stats. So it is objectively better than pretty much everything else, or every other Vladoff pistol, that is. And I think that's fine. It's the best in its class, and that's completely fine. Doesn't seem to have any spicy gimmicks. It doesn't have anything that's too ridiculously flashy, and I think that's good. You know, having a weapon with just good stats is fine. Moving on to almost the exact opposite, we have the Black Death. Now, the Black Death replaces the conference call, and I am moving outside in case shooting it in that area will break my game. Because, as you see, shooting it normally, you know, nothing. There's really nothing spicy. There's nothing that makes you go, wow. You hit a wall, and bullets bounce everywhere. Essentially, the way this works is that you shoot one spread, it bounces off and splits into 3, and then that continues on forever. Or maybe not forever, but continues on for a good long while. This was one shot and, you know, bullets everywhere. I believe this works pretty well on Gage. I'm not certain, I haven't tested it on her. The only character I've played in Reborn mod has been Maya, but... So, right away, what are we losing for this? We're losing the conference call, which is actually a very, very, very iconic weapon. So, when you're taking a weapon out like the conference call, a weapon that has been known for being extremely powerful, and on top of that, actually being quite fun. It was a unique weapon that was fun to use, and it had a good use case. So what are we getting? We are getting something that fulfills the same fantasy. Bullets everywhere. Just bullets absolutely everywhere, which is good. On top of good stats for a Hyperion shotgun. Really good, pretty good stats. A decent fire rate. And it gets upgraded from Legendary to Pearlescent. I think overall this was good because it kept... It essentially took the conference call and it spun it into a different thing. It fulfills the same fantasy of causing bullets to fly absolutely everywhere and destroying the frames of your game. But it's a little different, and that's fun. I think it functions in a way that is actually quite unique, and I think this would slot well onto maybe Gage or Salvador. And I think that's great. I think it, on top of, you know, fulfilling the bullets everywhere fantasy, I think it works a little bit better on mobbing. The conference call was always a little bit weak when it came to mobbing, just because you would miss so many bullets. You're still going to miss a lot of bullets, obviously. Like, there's no way in hell you're going to have all those hit. But I think overall it's probably just an upgrade on the conference call. Next, we have the one-shot. The one-shot's very unique, and I like it a lot. As you can see, it has insane accuracy, but I am moving at just a snail's pace. And the shtick of the one-shot, if you couldn't already tell, is that you're essentially going to be using it to one-shot whatever you're hitting. It's got a very nice, just dark design. It looks kind of imposing. And you can see plus 500% critical hit damage and plus 1500% weapon damage. And this is a weapon with 2.8 million damage on the card, which is insane. So, what? So we have no relic, we have no skills, and we just hit for 15 million. What's the cost? It's movement speed, takes 5 ammo per shot, and the reload speed is just awful. You're essentially using this to probably kill one thing at a time. Maybe if you're playing Maya, you phase lock a badass, and you headshot them, and then they're just gone instantly. I think it's good. I think it's really, really good, because getting up into the overpowered levels in Borderlands essentially makes it so that consistent damage is king. And this changes that to a degree. I believe there are probably very, very few mobs that don't actually get one shot by the sniper. And I think it's balanced in a way that makes it it's really it's kind of overpowered, but it's kind of fair in the same way, where you have an insane movement speed penalty on top of an extremely high ammo consumption, an extremely high reload time. But what you're getting is ridiculous amounts of damage, and I think that's fine. There hasn't been a sniper in Borderlands that has done that. They have all essentially fallen into, can they shoot fast enough to grind down badasses and other bosses? And if they can't, well, that sucks. It's just not useful in OP8. So I think this fulfills the proper sniping fantasy of, I want to hit people in the head and kill them instantly. So that's good. Moving on, we're going to be getting into the rocket launchers. First off, the thermogenesis, or the thermogenesis, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. This rocket launcher replaces the pyrophobia, and it does so wonderfully. It still comes in only fire element. It comes with an ignite chance of 100%. That might be because of the matching grip. I'm not entirely sure. Has a mag size of 12, and you'll see it consumes 5 ammo per shot. And if you're using a rocket launcher that consumes 5 ammo per shot, it better have an effect that's pretty damn good. And the thermogenesis definitely delivers. Because that's really fucking fun. Seeing that it's explosive, it's an explosive effect, in the sense that it's very flashy, not in the sense that it deals explosive damage. It's very, very flashy, and I like that a lot. That's a good thing when it comes to Pearlescent weapons, because it's flashy and it's fun and it has this unique characteristic about it, and it delivers an effective punch. This rocket launcher is legitimately good if you're using it against flesh targets. It's extremely, extremely fun to use. It just makes you feel like a god. I believe you are resistant to, you're completely resistant to the Novas. And I think this is the pyrophobia done right. This essentially takes the fantasy of causing these huge fiery explosions everywhere and turns that into a reality. A more sort of realistic use case, because the pyrophobia as you know, was just a little bit silly. There was almost no case in which you would hit people with the traveling novas. So I think this is designed perfectly. One of the best designed pearls in this set, in my opinion. Moving on to another launcher that I am not quite as excited about is the Behemoth, which, taking one look at it, you can probably tell it replaces the Norfleet. And what is going to live up to the Norfleet? Well, it's a burst launcher, which I actually do find to be quite fun. If you holding it normally, it fires 3 at a time in a Norfleet pattern. But if you aim down the sights, maybe it has 2 bursts, or maybe it empties the clip. I'm not entirely certain. As you saw there, it does empty my current clip, but I'm not sure if that's because the effect is to empty the clip, or if it fires off 2 bursts and I don't have a big enough mag size. Essentially, this is it's pretty much another Norfleet. There's really not much to say about the Behemoth. I think, whoops. Well, as I was saying before I was oh so rudely interrupted, there's really not that much to say about the Behemoth. It is essentially a reworked Norfleet, and it's not reworked in a way that makes it extremely exciting. It does make it more fun, in my opinion. I think the idea of a burst launcher is actually, really cool, and the design on the rockets is done wonderfully. It makes it look more rugged, a bit more explosive. But apart from that, it feels like Norfleet 2.0. And as someone who wasn't that big a fan of the Norfleet to begin with, I think this is fine. I think it's a fine upgrade, but it leaves a little bit to be desired, especially when living up to the Norfleet, which although I personally am not the biggest fan of, I know a lot of people really do enjoy the Norfleet. If you like the Norfleet, you're going to like the Behemoth, but don't expect anything game-changing. And I think maybe that is part of the point. A lot of people do really love the Behemoth, or the Norfleet, sorry, so making that, or removing the Norfleet and making radical changes probably wouldn't be the best idea. So I think its design is fine. I think the weapon is the Norfleet itself is too iconic to change too drastically. I think the best part about it is that the Norfleet got upgraded from Legendary to Pearlescent, which is where I believe it deserves to be. Moving on to another launcher, which I won't be able to showcase too terribly well here, because I have a Maliwan barrel and the speedy prefix, which you'll see why in a second, is the Zodiac. In the Zodiac, I think you'll notice right away, it's got a massive amount of projectiles, and it's got a huge magazine size. And if we're looking at the damage, we see 475,000 times 12 compared to 3 million times essentially 3 and 2.3 million essentially. So this is the shotgun launcher essentially, and I fucking love this thing. As you can see there, it's got the plasma plasma cannon barrel, and it's got the plasma cannon effect of dropping rockets as it follows. Oh my god. Wait. Are they still spawning? Holy. Okay, I think we're good. Wowza. But anyway, the Zodiac. Bandit Pearlescent launcher. Probably one of my favorite guns in the set, along with the Thermogenesis. I think the launchers as a whole were handled very, very well, because they, on top of feeling extremely powerful, they're also just really, really, really fun to use. And it has an E-Tech barrel, which makes it akin to the plasma cannons. The problem that I have with my current Zodiac is that I have so many speed, or I have 2 speed upgrades in the form of the Mollywan barrel, or the Mollywan exhaust, and the Speedy prefix, that I really don't get that much effectiveness out of its unique effect. That being said, it's still pretty goddamn cool. This launcher is, I don't know, it just feels really, really good to use. It feels like you're a carpet bomber. It's essentially a shotgun and a launcher combined. It does the plasma cannon well because it doesn't feel like you necessarily need to benefit from the unique effect, but when you do, it feels amazing. I think overall the damage output, like per trigger pull, is probably lower than both the Thermogenesis and the Behemoth. But that is partially because the magazine size is absolutely massive. And this does make a huge difference. It is like probably the perfect fight for your life weapon, because you never need to reload. You might need to reload the Behemoth or the Thermogenesis. You're not going to need to reload this. With a clip of 30, that's 15 trigger pulls of a rocket launcher, a Pearlescent rocket launcher. That's a lot of damage. I think this is great. This weapon is like amazingly fun to use. It slots very well into, anyone who would want a rocket launcher. I'm not entirely sure how it would function on a character like Gage, but I know this would do wonderfully on characters such as Axton, Salvador, Krieg, anyone who can benefit from explosive, or anyone who needs a fight for your life weapon. So this essentially can be used on anyone. And it's just really, really fun to use. Maybe that commentary isn't the most insightful, but yeah, I don't know. Moving on, we're actually going to hit the relics. And one relic I really do enjoy. One relic I think leaves a lot to be desired. There we go, the relic slot. Okay, so the Godspeed. As you can see here, movement speed plus 483.3%. On top of boost capacity and boost recharge rate and boost charge delay for, stats for the car. But, most people aren't going to look at that and say, oh, wow, the Godspeed. I'm going to use this to, drive around in cars. No, you're going to use it to sprint insanely fast. Because, I don't know, that's fun. It speeds up farming, and I think this is fine. This is fine. It's a quality of life change, essentially. You're not going to be extremely excited to see it drop in the sense that, like, oh my god, this piece of gear is going to carry me for the next few levels, or this piece of gear is going to essentially finish off my build. But it's probably a huge quality of life boost. After farming the Skeleton Kings and getting the Godspeed, this probably sped up the farming process by about 30%, because that walk is really, really long. So if you want to do like tubby farming in the dust, if you want to do, maybe you want to farm Captain Flint because you want to get the God Fist, this is your best friend. Now moving on to a pearl that I think was actually designed in a way that I actually do fundamentally disagree with. So you'll see there, grenade regen 1.0. How much is that? Well, if you look in the bottom right, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's really, really fast. I can't even outthrow the regen. So why do I have a problem with this? You'll see minus 50% grenade damage. And I think that's bad. Because looking at it, the Ubiquity is trying to enable a playstyle in which you are constantly spamming grenades. Like constantly spamming grenades. But there is, because of the grenade damage debuff, there's no reason to keep this on. There's almost no reason to keep it on. I think because it's a Pearl, I think plus grenade damage would have been fine, and if it was like too overwhelming, maybe minus gun damage. But I don't think Pearls should have trade-offs like that. I think if they're going to be trading off, or if they're going to be making a trade-off for anything, they should be gaining damage, not losing damage. It feels really, really bad to lose damage. And I think ultimately, because of the grenade damage decrease, that this just sits in your inventory, and if you're low on grenades, you slap it on and you regen a bunch, and you're done. And I really don't like that. I think this should enable a playstyle in which you're just constantly throwing out grenades at all times. But honestly, if I'm playing Axton and I have a grenade capacity of 15 or 16, I'm going to use all those 16 grenades and then just slap on the ubiquity, stand still for about probably 15 seconds, regen all of them back, and then just put on an explosive damage relic again. I really do not like the idea of gear, especially Pearlescent's, only having a use case outside of combat. Now, of course, you can still use it in combat, but it becomes... the question becomes, why would you? Because you regen grenades so quickly that you only have to put this on for moments at a time to get all of your grenades back. And I really don't like that. I think if there should be a damage trade-off, it should be a gun damage trade-off to encourage a grenade playstyle. If that's still too overwhelming, if it's too ridiculously powerful, and it just breaks the game, whatever, so be it. It's a Pearlescent. I think it should. It's not going to break raid bosses to any degree, I don't think. I can't think of a single raid boss that would get utterly abused by ubiquity. I could see a lot of mobbing challenges. You know, maybe like Digistruct Peak might become infinitely easier, as long as you have like an on-level fastball. But I think that's fine. I think this had a chance to enable very unique builds, and it seems to have missed the mark. There could be something I'm missing. This is only my opinion, of course, and I implore you, if you disagree, to tell me why. But the ubiquity just feels like it leaves something to be desired. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. Moving on to the shields. Shields are quite exciting. My probably personal favorite is the Primrose. And you'll see here on the card, it has an alright capacity for an adaptive shield. It has really good recharge rate, pretty good recharge delay, and pretty huge elemental resistance. Like, these stats aren't really all that special, apart from maybe the elemental resistance it's pretty good, and the recharge delay. But why are you taking the Primrose if these defensive stats aren't that great? Well, you can see indomitable health regeneration and action skill cooldown. So if we spec in two-phase luck here, normally it's a 13-second cooldown, and you can see bottom left that is recharging at a rate that is much, much faster than 13 seconds. This enables you to use your action skill a lot. This is a really, really good shield, specifically on Maya, which is probably why I like it so much. On top of adding a good amount of survivability. If I can break my shield here. And you can see there, I don't believe I can actually outdamage myself with grenades. Yeah. The health regen is quite large. So you are giving up capacity for health regen and action skill cooldown. Compared to regular resistance shields, this is probably a straight upgrade. There might be tankier versions, maybe in the... like, if you find maybe like a perfectly parted purple resistance shield, or adaptive shield, sorry, you might be able to find something with higher capacity, but you don't take these Pearlescent shields for the capacity. I'm telling you right now, you don't take any of these shields for the capacity. Even the evergreen, or the not the evergreen, sorry, the undying, which we'll get to in a second. Okay, so moving on, we have the sovereign, which is, well, as you can see, we got some pretty insane stats. So we've got 1 million capacity, which is very high. But capacity usually doesn't matter all that much, especially on OP8. Even if you're mobbing, there will be something that can take you down to health gate, usually a badass enemy, and especially with the Reborn mod pack, now that enemies spawn with unique weapons more and more, the chance to get health gated immediately probably goes up and up and up. So the capacity isn't really the selling point on this. It's really low recharge delay. It helps you, sustain from fight to fight, maybe poke out and in terms of taking cover, it regens really quickly. You can stabilize your HP situation really easily. It's got 36% absorb chance, which not that special. It's good. It's not insane. 73% elemental resistance. That's pretty sizable. That's pretty big. Of course, compared to even just the Primrose, it's a difference of 15%, which might not sound like much, but that is a lot. Objectively, this is statted better than a Primrose. So if you're looking just for stats, maybe you don't want the health regen or you don't want the action skill, I think the Sovereign is probably for you. It is it's a strict survival shield, on top of giving you about 300k max HP. And as you can see there, I'm missing about 60% of my HP. That is because Maya's maximum HP in the Reborn mod is, well, it's displayed right there, 205,246. So this multiplies your HP by about 2.5. That's really big. This is probably the shield you're taking if you know you're going to be running up against damage over time. Moving on, we have the Juggernaut, which I love. I really love. It is a roid shield with 0 capacity, 0 recharge delay, doesn't give anything for defense apart from damage resistance at the cost of slowing you down. And this roid damage, 876,000. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot of roid damage. To put that into perspective, this Salvation Pistol, it does less damage than the roid alone. Even to compare it to some of these launchers. I mean, yeah, the Behemoth does 3 million. This does a little less than a third of each rocket. And that's on melee. And that's huge, especially considering character skills such as Silence the Voices, Backstab, Ambush, things that improve melee damage. This is really huge. This has insane potential, and it increases survivability at least a little bit. I think, in terms of design, this is the Love Thumper, but not as annoying. The Love Thumper can get really visually noisy with the novas that go off, and it can be hard to use in co-op because you'll hurt your teammates. And I think this is a great shield. This is a great melee shield because it's a melee shield that you use if you want to deal the highest melee damage. Period. That's what it's used for. It's got a little bit of damage resistance, but you're not using this thing to survive, okay? You're not using this because you need defense stats. You're using it because you want to smack people to death. And I like it. Moving on, we have the Aegis, which is essentially your average TDR shield. You know, it has really low, like really, really low capacity and a ridiculous recharge rate. A recharge rate that overtakes the max capacity of the shield. And it looks, you know, the stats are very, very low. But that is also partially because the level requirement is 70. So maybe it's not as low as I think. But, of course, that's not what you look at when you're looking at Pearls. We're going to be looking at the HP regen and the ammo regen. This is, I think it's fine. It doesn't scream. It doesn't scream anything special to me. I do really, really love that there are more pearlescent shields, and by more pearlescent shields, I mean any pearlescent shields at all, as there are no pearlescent shields in the base game. But when I look at the shield, I think it's neat. I guess it just feels like a TDR shield with a little bit of something extra, which maybe that's exactly what it's supposed to be, but it doesn't feel like a pearlescent. I don't know how to describe it. It just doesn't do anything that makes me scream, or it doesn't. It's just not that spicy. I don't know. It's not anything that has an insane effect. We've got the Primrose that has ridiculous health regen and action skill cooldown, which is extremely noticeable. We have insane melee damage. We have really, really, really good survivability stats. Just all-around survivability stats. And then these two have insane capacity, but we haven't gotten to them, and we'll get to them in a second. And talking about the other shields, let's move on. So we have the Evergreen, which, if you looked into my inventory, you might think, why is this the skin? Oopsies. Why is this the skin for the Evergreen and not this? As you can see, this nice pine green skin is on a shield called the Undying, while the Evergreen has like a cyan colored. I don't know if that's a glitch or just a mess up, or maybe it's supposed to be that way. It's just supposed to be wonderfully ironic, and we're all supposed to laugh and have a great time. But it's not the point. The point is, we have a pretty high capacity, 950k, compared to 270 and 1 million on the Sovereign. And if you might be saying, well, it's a turtle shield, OP8, why is it lower than the Sovereign? Well, red text, BFFs forever and ever. Capacity increased by 25% for each Evergreen equipped in your party. We will see in a second if that includes the one you have equipped, which I believe it does. Yeah. So, the way the Evergreen works is that you always take the capacity and add 25% to it, because the capacity increase by 25% includes just the one you have on. Now, there's a problem with this. It's a pearlescent shield that you want other people to have. And if you're playing the game normally, that is really, really, really hard to do. I believe there are about 26 pearlescents in the game now. 25 or 26. If you get a pearlescent drop from a midget, a loot midget, you are looking at less than 4% chance to get an Evergreen. And it is obviously most effective when you have 4 people using the shield. So unless you are willing to duplicate or gib in, I think this shield is underwhelming. There might be an effect that I am overlooking. I do not know all the red text effects on these weapons, but that being said, I think this was a bad choice. I don't think having a capacity increase for I don't think having, how do I say this? You shouldn't be specifically rewarded for having more than one of these in the party if it's a pearlescent, because if you're playing through normally, that's extremely unreasonable. It's really, really unreasonable to have 4 people with evergreens. So I think this sort of mechanic should have been reserved for either a seraph or a legendary item, and even that is kind of stretching it. I think more along the lines of seraph. I think I would have been completely fine if this was a seraph item, because it is something that you can purchase, and it's something that everybody can get. Because yeah, you can give it in. If you know how to set up Reborn, you can definitely maneuver your way around Borderlands 2 gibbed. But I like to play fair. You know, I've gotten all these weapons on my own. It took me a long, long time. And if I were to be playing with, 1 to 3 other people, and we got this really cool evergreen shield, and we wanted to use it together, we would spend a lot of time hunting these down. So I think the capacity increase per player using this was misplaced. I think this should have been... This does not feel like a Pearlescent shield, and it's not because the stats are underwhelming, necessarily. It's just because it don't put something that promotes cooperative play on a Pearlescent weapon like this. You're not, if you're playing legitimately, you're almost never going to have more than 1 person with this shield at a time, and you will probably never have 4 people with this shield at a time if you're playing legitimately. I find this to be really, really unreasonable if you want to play legitimately. Okay, moving on. We go to the Undying. Oh, and on top of that, I would like to mention one more thing. There is only a 50,000 HP decrease, which I love. It makes Turtle Shields usable in OP8. That being said, I think Turtle Shields are still really, really bad in OP8, even for mobbing, especially now that enemies have unique weapons, but we'll get more into that when we look at the Undying. So, the Undying. I think this shield is really, 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 really good. It's probably the best shield in the game, and it's not for why you think. It's not because its capacity is extremely high. I think that actually almost doesn't matter at all. I think this shield in particular highlights a design problem in OP8. I don't think this was the modder's fault at all. I think this was a good experiment, and I think it's an experiment that succeeded and failed in certain ways. So we see Undying. High capacity at no health penalty. On top of no health penalty, there is no movement penalty. There's no damage penalty. There's no penalty at all. We just have insane capacity. Just base capacity is ridiculous. Base capacity being this high literally doesn't matter some of the time. Of course, it matters sometimes. It'll matter if you are getting hit by maybe some normal marauders. Maybe you get run up on by a regular psycho. But maybe a badass marauder spawns and he has an electric rocket launcher. Or maybe like a Goliath blaster or something. You get hit once and you're going to be put down to health gate. So why is this shield so good? Right? Like what makes this shield special if the capacity doesn't keep you alive? Well, if you play Borderlands, you'll notice that the fight for your life time is ticking down really, really, really slowly. This is why you take the Undying. And in my opinion, this fight for your life duration is probably a bit too much. When it comes to Pearlescents, they should be overpowered, right? They should be... And you'll see, the fight for your life duration lasts so long, you actually get the color back. But as I was saying, Pearlescents should always define... They should be at the peak of the power level in terms of what they're being compared to. This should be the best turtle shield or at least second best if you're comparing it to, the Evergreen, which is another turtle shield of Pearlescent rarity. But this fight for your life duration is just too much. It's just way too much. If you take this into any mobbing area, you'll never die. And I know it's called the Undying. I know you're supposed to be horrifically tanky. But there's a problem. I think it circumvents a lot of the challenge in mobbing. I think this weapon, or this shield, is good. I think it functions well. But I think it functions well for the wrong reasons. I think... Well, let's just compare it. Let's compare it to something like the Primrose, which is, my pet favorite out of all these Pearlescent shields. It gives you things that you do not get otherwise. On a shield, I mean. It gives you, ridiculous health regeneration and really good action skill cooldown. And essentially what this does is that it makes it so you have a little bit more variety in your build. Maybe because of the Primrose, you don't slot into Quicken. Maybe because of the Primrose, instead of taking a Bone of the Ancients, you take a normal Elemental Relic. So, here's the problem with the Undying. You don't need anything. You don't need anything because the Undying has you covered. If you're mobbing, you will never die. And I think that's bad because it circumvents the challenge in a way that's not fun. The Primrose is fun because you get to use your action skill a lot more. You get to regen health at a ridiculous rate, so the downtime is a lot less if you're, maybe ducking behind cover, but you're not unkillable. The Sovereign has just insane defense stats across the board, makes you way, way tankier to both elements and bullets because of the absorb chance. It has almost as much capacity as the Undying. It gives you a lot of max HP, and it has a low recharge delay. But if you go down, there is a chance to be health gated, and then on top of that, you receive a dot, and then that kills you. But the Undying is, I can run face first into 2-3 badasses, and I have way more than enough time to kill them, to get up. And I think this doesn't... how do I put it? It nullifies challenge... It nullifies challenge too much. It makes the game too easy when you're mobbing. On top of, it doesn't nullify the challenge in a fun or interesting way. I think this was an experiment, and it's an experiment in which the results are something I am not too terribly fond of. I worded that really weirdly, but I hope you know what I mean. I think this is my least favorite Pearlescent out of the pack. And I definitely do mean that. That being said, it's what? It's one Pearlescent that I don't agree with out of, I think, 14 extras. I think, the track record, don't let this dissuade you. Kobe, the person who made these mods and weapons, is an amazing modder, and he did a really, really great job. This is just something that, just one of the pieces of gear that I think was designed kind of poorly. Because you don't take it for the capacity. We already see the Sovereign has similar capacity with way better defense stats. You only take it for the fight for your life duration. And when you're only taking something for the fight for your life duration, that fight for your life duration better be really, really useful. And it is. It's way too useful. But staying alive because you just have way more time and fight for your life is just not... It's not fun for me, personally. If you disagree and if you think this shield is fine, I'd love to know why. I just think it's way too much. Going on to the last pearlescent in the pack, we have the Wrecker. It's a grenade mod. And I like this. I like the grenade a lot. And we are out of grenades, so let me just pop on the Ubiquity. So, as you can see, it's extremely, extremely flashy. You can't hurt yourself with it, which I like. And to me, this is essentially just fastball plus. Why do I say that? And let's get this behemoth out of the way. I say that because it detonates on impact. Or not necessarily on impact, but it has 0 fuse. And it does a lot of damage. It does a crazy amount of damage. 6 million in this massive AoE. This is essentially the big brother to the fastball to me, because it's got an instant nuke, essentially, like an instant burst of damage on whatever you throw it at. But the reason why it's the fastball plus is because, I mean, you can see this AoE, right? It's huge. It's huge. I mean, it's just fastball, but you get to hit more than one person at a time. I think that's fine. I think it's fine because it's a pearlescent weapon that is extremely, extremely, extremely flashy. And it's a pearlescent weapon that's effective. It's a pearlescent weapon that is, you know, one of the best in its class. And I think that's exactly what a pearlescent should strive to be. So, going over what we have. So, we'll do a quick rundown. Salvation, best healing weapon in its class. Good. That's fine. It's a weapon that enables the healing of teammates, I believe. And it's a weapon that has healing that would rival the pre-patch Grogs. That's fine. That's exactly what a pearlescent should be. It should be, you know, the best healing weapon. The railgun. It's essentially a muck-a-muck with legendary or pearlescent stats. That's great, with an emphasis on critical hit, which I think is important to note, and I think is a good design choice, both in terms of snipers and in terms of balance. Cerberus. It's a triple, or it's a 3-pellet Vladoff pistol with no damage or fire rate penalties. Great. The Draco. One of my favorites. It takes the saw bar and it makes it more usable. It has a more flexible use case. You can use it at your feet and you can use it from far away. You don't just have to sit at that awkward mid-range anymore, which I think is great. I don't think pearlescents should have a range in which they have to be used unless they're shotguns. So this is one of my favorites for sure. The Behemoth. Just a twist on the Norfleet. If you like the Norfleet, you're going to like the Behemoth. I do like the Behemoth more than the Norfleet. I think it's cooler, although I do not think it wasn't changed enough to make me too terribly excited about it. That being said, I think on top of the skin and the burst fire, I think it's a lot more fun to use than the normal Norfleet. The One Shot. One of its kind. A sniper that is meant to one-hit KO any enemy, even in the OP levels. This is great. Comes at the penalty of movement speed and reload speed and ammo consumption. But what are you getting? Damage. And like a lot of damage. Just a lot of damage. I think it's great. That's also up there with the Draco in terms of design, because where the Draco tweaks the saw bar in a way to make a pearlescent weapon much more useful, much more viable, this actually fills a case in which there was no pearlescent before. This feels like the Godfinger if you're across the map. And I think that's wonderful. This is what the Godfinger wishes it was. We have the Black Death. Bullets everywhere. Still fun to use. You know, fulfills the fantasy of, you know, bullets flying, you know, every which way, up, down, left, right. I think it's fine. I think it's a good replacement for the conference call. It adds a unique spin on the conference call to a degree where it's not overwhelming. It's not an overwhelming gimmick that'll take away from the experience, but it's a gimmick that is useful enough to rival the conference call before the change. Thermogenesis. Amazing. This is the pyrophobia done right, essentially. Essentially, it's definitely up there with the Draco in terms of design philosophy. What did you want from the pyrophobia? Well, you want, these constant novas to hit. You want to hit more explosions per one rocket. And the thermogenesis says, you know what? I can do that, and I can do it, but way better. The Zodiac. You feel like a bomber plane, and it's really, really, really fun. It's got an insane magazine size, probably the best fight for your life rocket launcher, as long as you have a full mag, that is, as it has an 8-second reload, which is extremely overwhelming compared to the 5.9 and 3.2 of the Thermogenesis and the Behemoth. Godspeed. A general quality of life upgrade. And now that I realize I should unequip all my... There. The Godspeed. A general quality of life upgrade. Increases the speed of farming by probably 30%, depending on... Or it'll increase the speed of farms like Flint and the Skeleton Kings by probably about 30%. Because the most daunting part about farming Flint or the Skeleton Kings is not the bosses themselves, but the walk to them. So this cuts that out. It says, you know what? Running that entire way, that is not gameplay. So we're going to speed that up. It also allows you to push the game to its limits and get to places where you were not supposed to be, which is also very, very fun. Ubiquity. Overall, underwhelming. I think that if you are trying to enable a grenade spam playstyle, there should not be grenade damage debuff. The Wrecker, completely fine. It's a upgrade upon grenades. It's fun to use because it's very flashy. It's very satisfying. I believe it has good knockback, so it's got good crowd control on top of that. And it's an overall good damage grenade. On top of all the it's probably the best grenade for just strict damage, barring something like maybe the Stormfront. Simply because this is explosive and the Stormfront is electric, so you cannot match types. There's no enemy that is just weak to explosive in this game. The Sovereign. Probably the tankiest shield out of all the Pearlescents. It is completely fine. I have no problem with it. And I think in terms of it, if you want to be, a walking meat shield, this is what you take. The Juggernaut. Insane roid damage. This is what we needed for OP8. This enables the viability, or this possibly enables the viability of Melee Zero again in OP8. I wouldn't know, I have not played it, but this seems like enough damage. The Primrose. Insane action cooldown rate, or action skill cooldown, good health regen, and good elemental resistance. This is probably the most offensively statted shield out of all of these, barring the Juggernaut, of course. The Aegis. I'm not too excited about this one. It's a TDR shield with health and ammo regen. Okay, that's fine by me. I think an ammo regen shield was needed, but it's not something I'm ever going to be too excited about. The Undying. I think the fight for your life duration is overwhelming, and I do not believe the capacity is worth it. You don't take this shield for the capacity, you take it for the fight for your life duration. And you take it for the fight for your life duration because the fight for your life duration is way too much. That being said, I do not think this is... I don't think this was a bad try. I think this was a good try at making a turtle shield viable in the higher levels. Because it is viable. It's probably the only viable turtle shield in OP8. And that's good. It might be really, really good on Gauge, with blood-soaked shields. But I I just think it's a little bit too much, even for a Pearlescent. And the Evergreen. I disagree with the philosophy that there should be more than one person on a team with the shield if you're playing legitimately. So, that's about it. That wraps it up for all these pearls, I think. Overall, Kobe did a wonderful job, especially on most of the weapons. The only weapon... actually, there isn't a weapon I disagree with. Of course, if you're looking here, I am realizing I missed the Midnight Coup. There might be an edit somewhere in here displaying that. But yeah, I think overall the Reborn mod for the Pearlescents, it upped the ante on what a Pearlescent should be, and rightfully so. All these weapons are very, very powerful in their own right, and that's exactly what they should be. They should be extremely, extremely powerful pieces of gear. And there is not a single piece of gear that does not fulfill that requirement. One piece of gear in particular goes above and beyond, and maybe the Evergreen is a bit underwhelming, but I cannot be for certain, as I have not partied up with 4 Evergreens before. So, yeah, I absolutely love the Reborn mod pack. These new unique weapons have been a breath of fresh air, and I wish nothing for the best for Kobe in the future and his future endeavors in modding. Okay, goodbye. Okay, well, if this isn't a jarring edit, then I don't know what is. But here we are, Midnight Coup. And yes, it's coup, not coupe. I think I've seen 2-3 videos showcasing this weapon. All called it the coupe. Knock that shit off. Okay. So, it's a Jacobs Pearlescent pistol. It does not usually come with 7 pellets. I have the mash-in prefix. And this is gibbed, by the way. This is the only Pearlescent that isn't legitimately farmed. Oh boy, my pride. But anyways, what makes it unique? So, like other Jacobs pistols in the Reborn mod pack, we've got a very slow firing hip fire, not as fast as you can pull the trigger. And other Jacobs pistols get fully auto aim down sights. This one gets a burst. And this burst works really, really effectively because if you'll notice, the accuracy doesn't go down until the final shot. You'll see every shot is on target, and the only hop up, the only real hop up that is the 3rd shot. So you can be really, really accurate with this. I think that's great. In terms of overall effectiveness, I would have to assume this is more effective than the Unforgiven. It has an overall damage. The damage on the card, as it is, if you hit every single shot, is over 1 million. It's a Jacobs weapon, so it's also got pretty spicy critical hit. I think this is great. And I was watching through some of the footage, and you know what I realized? I gotta stop saying fine. Called every weapon fine. I'm gonna call this one great. Spice it up a little bit. I think it's great. It feels like a Jacobs pistol that is just strictly an upgrade. Now that the Maggie is out, and we have the mash-in prefix on every single revolver, well, we need something to replace its power level, right? And I think this is where this comes in. The luck cannon might also do that job, but I believe the luck cannon is a lot less spammy. This one can shoot a lot faster. It can put like a lot of bullets on target, which I think will be fun. Really, really fun. And I think it's good. It's good because on top of having high per hit damage, it fires in a burst. So you can hit a burst of insane damage. The problem with the Unforgiven is that it just fired too slow. And ultimately, between bursts, it might be similar. I think hip fire might be a similar fire rate to the original Unforgiven, but I don't think that's what you're going to be really using the Unforgiven for. I think you're going to be using it mostly for burst headshots. It's going to feel like a proper hand cannon. I'm assuming that most mobs will get just obliterated by a single burst. And yeah, that officially wraps it up. I also think it looks pretty damn slick, and I know this is the Midnight Coup is a reference to a Destiny weapon. Okay, so now the video is actually over, and if I make another one, you will hear 100% less of the word fine. Okay, goodbye.